This is why we do this, because I'm super nervous and I'm sure you're a little bit nervous. So if we do this before she gets here, then it's a little bit,
less nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Well, Heidi.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
No problem.
This is another episode of Magnolia House with my childhood friend, Heidi Geist. I've known you like 20 years.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming.
No problem.
We're going to talk about Isabella House.
Okay.
Which is a rehab, and whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah.
So you went to Isabella House.
I did.
Did you do 6 months?
I did.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. And what was that like?
It was intense. It was definitely a difficult program. But I really enjoyed it. I actually had done another 30-day treatment center before Isabella House, just directly before.
Yeah, because you have to, right?
You didn't then, because lots of the girls that I was there with, came in, and detoxed there.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
you can detox?
No,
or not anymore?
You're not supposed to, but a lot of them did.
Yeah.
So, like my roommate, when I first got there, we got there on the same day. She definitely was coming down the first couple days. But I think a lot of the girls did, especially the pregnant ones, came from places like Swedish, stuff like that.
What's Swedish?
Swedish is a medical detox. I don't know where it is. I think it's, I want to say around like maybe Everett or Marysville, kind of over there. But, I did detox and then a treatment center, and that was kind of to wait until I could get straight into Isabella House, so that way I didn't have an overlap because I was homeless.
Were you waiting for a room to open up?
Yeah. Yeah. So my plan wasn't, I really didn't have a plan when I went into detox. I just did. I just went there and kind of, picked my path from there. And Isabella House is where I ended up. And I'm glad I did. So, yeah.
And what's the day-to-day like? What do they have you do on a daily basis?
So you wake up pretty early if you want meds.
Which I'm sure everybody's like first thing.
Oh, everybody's took just tons of meds. I didn't personally.
What do you mean tons? Because isn't it like a one a day, like Suboxone? Do they have methadone too?
If you take Suboxone or methadone, it's something that you had to have had previously, like before you got into.
What other meds are available then?
So you see, like a mental health, I wouldn't say counselor, but a prescriber. Yeah. And he'll prescribe you things, for anxiety.
Probably pain management.
No.
No?
No.
You have to just tough it out?
Yeah.
The number one thing my sister talks about with withdrawals is like, it's fucking painful.
Yeah, and that's why they suggest, now I guess it's required, and it probably was then. It just was more lax. Yeah. Detox.
Yeah.
Other treatment.
Yeah. That makes sense. But how long really? Because most detox places are like a week, right?
Yeah. I was in Isabella House, over 3 years ago. So I went in November 2017. So things were a little different, but I did 2.5 weeks of detox. Yeah. But I have had friends that in the last, couple years have been in and out of detox, and it is like they will kick you out after
a week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason I'm asking is like, how long do you think physically it really actually takes you to detox?
To detox, to start feeling like yourself.
Or at least not feel sick.
Not feel sick. I'd probably say about like 5 days.
Really?
A good, 5 days.
To feel kind of comfortable?
To feel better, I mean, more comfortable, definitely. But you're mentally not detoxed. I mean, really for a few months.
Really?
I mean, yeah.
And what is it? What do you mean, like, what does it feel like mentally when you're not on drugs, but you're, sober?
You have this just like constant, like, thought, like battle in your head, like, I want to get high just all the time. Yeah. And then you get this like kind of flood of emotions because you've been using so long to bury every emotion, trauma, whatever you have. So it can be really difficult for some people. And that's why a lot of people, if they get fresh out of detox, you know, they'll just go right back to what they were doing before.
And that's, how many do you think you've been to?
I've been to the same detox twice.
Oh, where was that?
That was at.
So we're going to bleep that because I have a lot of shit to say about them.
Oh, no, I do too.
How bad are they really?
Okay, so the first time I went, I wasn't feeling it because I was forced to be there, kind of. I was pregnant and I didn't want to be there. And it was awful because I kind of made it awful. Yeah. Second time I was there, I loved it. Honestly, I liked the people I was with. I liked the staff. But my boyfriend relapsed a while ago. Yeah. And, you know, I had high, you know, like, I like. So, you know, of course, I sent him there. Yeah. And it was awful for him. Really?
What are the living conditions like there? My sister says it's like bare minimum. Okay,
so there's the now I haven't been into the new building, but there is like the sobering unit, which is like basically think of like jail kind of.
Really?
Okay, this is the old building.
But that's how my sister described it. She said really it's similar. Basically like a mat.
There are mats on the floor.
Yeah, okay.
There's a bathroom, kind of.
Alex and I had the podcast yesterday doing a bit of a pre-show, and I said that. And in my heart, I didn't necessarily believe that was true because my sister told me, and she's always exaggerating how bad things are.
Yeah.
Well, but that's okay. But here's my point: if you're somebody trying to get sober, right?
Yeah.
And I can only imagine your mental state at that time, what your previous living conditions were, like my sister on the street or in a car or wherever, crashing at places. If you're doing the heroic work of trying to get yourself clean, trying to get your act together, and they put you on mats on the fucking floor.
Okay, so I have to say, you know, I was homeless when I went there the first time. Wasn't. I was pregnant, so I got like fast tracked up into the detox facility. The second time I was homeless. I was not pregnant. And there just happened to be a ton of people there. I was in the sobering unit for like 5 days. Honestly, it was better conditions than what I was before because I was literally on the street. So at least it was a place to stay. Now, I was scared because you know, obviously when you're using, you have friends that have been there and whatever. And, you know, they did make it seem like it was a lot worse. The staff makes it better, at least. You know, I know someone that still works there. Too. It depends.
I've heard, I'm just going to, keep in mind my sister is a very angry and negative person.
Yeah, I get that.
But she said the staff is very mean and they don't treat you like people.
So...
And also, she's been to a few detox places, and she says this is kind of a normal thing.
Yeah, and I would agree. It depends on how you act, who you are, and like your willingness to. If you want to be there, you're going to accept the conditions that you're in because you want to better yourself, and you know that that's the first step. Yeah. You know, if you don't want to be there, or if you are there, you know, strictly because you think it's the right thing, but your heart's really not in it, it's going to be harder to kind of accept that and move forward. And, you know, the whole time I was there, 5 days is a long time to sleep on a mat in a room with a bunch of other people that are withdrawing worse than you or off. You know, people who are withdrawing from alcohol, I would say probably the worst because they shake, they're loud, they vomit a lot. Yeah. You know.
And it's one of the more dangerous withdrawals.
Definitely.
Which is surprising. You would think heroin or meth is like the worst ones, but more people die from alcohol.
Exactly. So, you know, it is bad. It sucks. When I was there, I do know a woman that still works in the in the sobering unit. I don't know if maybe I was just kind of like her favorite because I do feel like definitely people do pick kind of favorites and, you know, favor other people more than some. Yeah. But I was treated nicely. The food is gross.
That's okay. That's another topic I wanted to get to because my sister, so she says the food is so awful there, but they have vending machines.
Yeah.
But that's problematic because that means you have to carry money on you.
Right. So there's not vending machines in the sobering unit. Once you've moved out of the sobering unit, conditions are a lot nicer. You know, a lot of the times you start off in a room with a couple other people. Once people start moving out, you get your own room and it's not bad. Then there are vending machines and.
I just feel like the initial step into making the choice to get sober should be a warm welcome, comfortable living standards. I mean, fuck. I could go out and drive around town right now and find 20 like fold out janky beds that you could put a mat on. It's like so much more dignified than fucking putting people on the floor.
Yeah. I think there's reasoning behind it. I don't know it. But, you know, the sobering unit is one thing. The actual detox facility, I can really only speak for the old building because it's the only one I've been in. I'm sure that they have, it's similar, but it's nice up there.
Yeah.
You know, there are staff. The staff, when I was there, I do know a bunch of them still work there. They're great. Yeah. And they're nice. And I didn't really see either, you know, any of the people, at least that I do know that are still there, kind of doing the favoritism thing. They were nice to everyone, well, unless you did something wrong.
We're only human. And it's like if you get one person who's super high and like problematic, aggressive, probably my sister, very loud, very angry, nothing's good enough, treat everybody like crap, you're not going to be the favorite. So I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But man, so what it was, how different was that from your experience from going to Isabella House?
Well, so can I back up a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, so from Detox, I went to Spark. Spark's a really small, I won't talk much about this, but it's really small, 30 days. It was a house. It was me and like 6 other girls. And I liked that kind of smallness. Yeah. Going from that to Isabella House is really overwhelming because there's a lot of girls there. I know.
I'm imagining just a house. What is it a complex?
It's a big house. It's like a mansion.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And how many people would you say? 20?
I want to say that like the most that there ever was when I was there was maybe like 26 people. 28.
Still a lot.
26 adults.
Yeah.
And then however many kids.
So it's got to be a mansion.
It's huge. Yeah. It's huge. It's 3 floors.
Where is it? Have I seen it driving around?
I'm sure you have seen it. I had seen it a million times, never known what it was.
Yeah.
But it's big. There's 3 floors. There's a bunch of like shared rooms where they might bunk, 2 to like 4 people in the room. And then there's, multiple single rooms.
Yeah.
But it's overwhelming. I remember the first time I walked in, there was a girl and she gave me the dirtiest look. Just like, I hate you. Yeah. Look, and I'm just like shook. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is going to be awful. Like right when you got there? Immediately walked in the door and she's just like glared at me.
Just
like
going through her own.
Oh, she was, as I found out. But she ended up leaving the next day and I just couldn't help feeling like I'm the reason why this girl who I'd never met in my life left because she didn't like me for whatever reason.
That's, she left. And that poses another question, which is, this is on your own volition that you're there, right? You can
for the
leave
most part.
Whenever you want.
Yeah,
unless it's court ordered. Which
you can still leave. You'll just get arrested.
Yeah. Yeah. And so were you there on your own accord?
I was there on my own. Yeah.
So why did you never choose to leave?
Well,
because a lot of people know my sister. I mean, a lot of people.
It's a hard program, but I was there because I wanted to get clean. I wanted my kids back. Yeah. I had this really strong feeling, which I'm really grateful for. Oh.
We're gonna pause. Our second guest is here.
Okay.
Okay, so we're here with Tennille. Is that how you say your name?
Yes.
Of Isabella House. We've got Heidi Geist here.
Hello.
We just did a pre-show with her.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming.
Of course.
We just wanted to talk about Isabella House.
Sure.
Among other things, I have a lot of thoughts on the whole situation with how our state handles getting people sober, housing, mental health, all of that stuff.
Great.
So I'll do a kind of summary of what I think Isabella House is, and you can correct me where I'm wrong, or either of you.
Perfect.
So it's a rehab facility.
Correct.
Basically. And I was told by your mom, actually, that it's one of 3 in Washington that allows you to have your children there. Is that?
There's a few more, but Isabella House is the only program on this side of the mountains that's a PPW program, so Pregnant and Parenting Women program.
Okay, that's wonderful. Yep. That's like a saving grace. And so basically the way it works is 1 week of detox, 1 month of rehab at another facility, and then you can do 6 months at your facility.
So sometimes it works like that. Sometimes we have people that come right from either a detox program or right from being homeless. So it depends. With COVID, it's changed a bit just because we're trying to reduce the exposure potential, and we've been very successful with that so far. But we do ask that they go to detox prior to coming in, and if they can do a 30-day program, they're usually a lot more stable. So we do ask that, but it's not required.
Okay. And she was just talking about her 6 month.
And I did do a 30-day before, and I definitely came in with a different attitude than a lot of the other girls because I kind of already knew a little bit to what to expect in a treatment facility. Yeah. So
I was
different, but
asking her, we didn't quite get to it. What is the day-to-day like for somebody who's going through the program?
So they're doing treatment basically from about 7:30 in the morning to about 7:30 at night. And so they're doing programming the entire day, and that's Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday is a partial day. They have half the day off, and then Thursday and Friday it's full days again. And then some programming on the weekend as well, but not much.
And what does that entail exactly?
So they do parenting classes, drug and alcohol prevention, relapse prevention. We do life skills. We do emotional well-being, trauma, domestic violence. Wow. We do an evidence-based parenting program, Circle of Security. And that's I think 8-9 week course.
I think it's 9 weeks.
9 weeks.
Yeah, what I remember. Okay. It's long.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It honestly, I've been on the phone with a million different facilities, just with my sister, who's currently in a mandatory detox.
Yeah.
And it sounds amazing comparatively.
Thank you.
It sounds really great. I also want to get to. I have so many frustrations, like I said, with how this whole system works.
Certainly.
So are you aware of Ricky's Law?
I am.
So that has been, it's been a saving grace on one end and the most frustrating thing in the world on the other hand. Because it's one of the few laws that Washington has where you can actually detain somebody and kind of force them to go through a detox. But the thing is, it's only a 5-day 120-hour detox. And at least from my sister's experience, that's typically when she starts to feel the worst. I don't know. You said it kind of takes 5 days to
I think around 5 days you start to feel better physically. Yeah. But, mentally you're still at the same place you were when you came in, if not worse.
Yeah. And so this is the third time she's been picked up. Yeah. And they said it's rare, but sometimes the court rule that they suggest they do another extended 2 weeks, which third round, they finally suggested that. So fingers crossed they keep her there. But it was just a bummer because the other times it was 5 days in, she's still pissed off. She's still wanting to use. And it's like she realized she had $20 in her pocket when they gave her her clothes back. And she said the second she got out, she was like, calling my dealer. And then she overdosed. And so it's like, so I was talking to the woman on the phone. I was like, I appreciate that Ricky's Law is a thing because it's like you feel so powerless with the way things work because, personal freedoms and all that, you can't force anybody to do anything they don't want to do. But when it's a loved one and you can see that they're clearly damaging their life, she died technically twice and was revived, luckily. And she's had a blood infection from a needle. It's dark. And she wants to get sober. But the thing is, it's almost like you need somebody to not give you an option to leave for the first month or so, just to clear your head. And so, I don't know how I feel about Ricky's Law.
Well, I think that while Ricky's Law, the reasons why they implemented it are so important, there's missing pieces of that. The follow-up afterwards is, I think, the problem. 5 days isn't enough time, especially if they're being externally motivated to do it. It's going to be far more difficult to stay sober, and that's just the nature of the game, really. until in 5 days isn't enough to flip that switch.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got a lot of trauma and things that you need to work through. You're not even beginning to look at that. And so addressing all of that holistically is so important.
So do you have similar frustrations with the limitations that the state puts on you guys?
So I think I've learned to work with it and utilize what we do have. You know, with our program, it's pretty unique. And so the motivators are definitely different than they would be in a typical program. You know, children are the driving force a lot of the time. And for me, I don't care why you came to treatment at all. I don't care if it was the court system. I don't care if it was a PO. I don't care if it was CPS. Hopefully something happens in that 6 months that gets you to look at your life and realize the value in it and that you're important and deserve better than that. So being intrinsically motivated is not necessarily a concern for me in the beginning. It's what happens after that in that period of time. Hopefully they pick something up. But I think those shorter programs are really difficult to instill the importance of life and value and family and all of that. It's just too difficult.
That's 5 days is nothing. When you're
Yeah.
talking about completely changing the entire way somebody lives their entire life, that's like nothing. What are you gonna say?
Yeah, well, 6 months, you know, is a perfect amount of time, because I remember when I was there were lots of girls that were really on the fence on, like, do I want to be here? You know, what is it worth it to me to stay? You know, some of those girls left 3 months in usually, and a lot of those girls stayed, you know, and the girls that left, at least the ones I know of, the couple girls that I was close with that I was in treatment with all relapsed. I mean, afterwards, you know, so it wasn't in them to stay.
Yeah.
You know,
after
there were
the 6 months?
No, they left around 3 months.
Oh, okay.
You know, obviously lots of girls come in and leave all the time. But, you know, the ones that are fighting that battle is if, you know, do I want to be here is, you know, do I want to be sober? Usually I'd say around that 3 months, it's like, I've done 3 months, I'm good. But in real life, it's like, you know, you have to commit it to it.
That's incredible, because in my mind, because I don't struggle, I struggle with my own addictions, smoking, whatever. But if I were to hit the 3 month mark, I'd be like, not in the clear, but we've gone through the worst. It would be so disheartening if you went back after that.
Well, the issue, I think, and I think it's worth saying, so around 3 months, 90 days to 120 days is when we really start to see behaviors come out. And so our program, thankfully, is long enough to kind of withstand that period of time, and pause is really, really significant at that time as well. And so your brain is telling you, yes, I've got this, but it's tricking you. And so there's a lot of other things going on during that time that typically will lead people to want to abort treatment and then go use, typically.
That's rough. Is there any way they're able to start preparing for when they get out, finding housing?
We do all of that. So our program is holistic. So we have an ARNP on staff. So she prescribes medications, including MAT medications or medication withdrawal management.
Things like Suboxone, methadone.
Correct.
When I was there, that wasn't an option.
Correct.
You had to come in with it.
Yes.
To have it.
So we have that now.
That's good.
With the prescription, right? Not with your whole dose for the 6 months.
No, so no, they don't do that. That would be wildly reckless, I would say. That would be a liability for that prescriber for sure.
But what I mean is, if you come with it, you can get it refilled.
Yeah,
right?
you come already prescribed to it. They accommodate how you get it, you know, and stuff like that.
But we have our own provider now, so that's very helpful. Cool. We have a nurse on staff. We have our therapeutic childcare. We have a lot of different supports for the families, and when they're getting ready to transition, we start about 8 weeks prior to them completing treatment, and we put them in a transition class, and so they're looking at housing, aftercare, any medical issues, any therapies, what that CPS case would look like if they have one.
That's another topic I want to get to.
So Danielle, can I ask you a question? So I lived in transition house. I was lucky, but it is only, like 6 rooms in an apartment.
Correct.
So 5 rooms in an apartment. So it's pretty small compared to the 20 some girls that are leaving, and they're not all leaving at one time, but the transition house is it's 18 months.
Wow.
So there's not always vacancies. I know I was really lucky to move in there. I moved in there like 2 weeks after I graduated because I just happened to be able to do that. But I found I had a really hard time in those, like, the last transition period, if I was going to find housing, because I moved it back in with my mom and then into, but if I didn't have my mom, I would have gone to a shelter. Yep. So, I feel like it's said, we will help you with housing. I felt like that was more kind of hyped up for not really anything.
For this 18-month transition house you're speaking?
That was after.
So after. Yeah. So, I mean, the last few weeks when you're in that, like, transition period to leave, the Isabella house, not transition house, I felt like I was going to have more help, I guess, to find housing. And everything fell through. But I would have been able to move into an Oxford house. So that was one thing.
What's that?
An Oxford house is the sober house. That's basically really it. But I feel like that was something when I went in, I was like, I'm going to have housing after this. And that's not always the case.
That's true. Yeah. So back in 2012, Spokane adopted King County's model of housing, transition housing. So they wiped all of the wait lists away. So typically we would have someone come into treatment, and about 3 months in, we'd start having them apply for different housing, like St. Margaret's, those programs that are very supportive, lots of case management. So they took those away, and we ended up having no housing. So, and we have women with children with CPS cases, all of that. So we were able to get the county to recognize that our women were homeless 2 weeks before they completed treatment, which is absurd.
Yeah. That's one of the worst things. That's
which was really hard to do. I know that I had a ton of problems getting to that, homeless status. Yep. Because they're like, you're not homeless, though. I'm like, I technically am.
The hoops you have to jump to.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and how do you explain that to the providers that are saying, we're in charge of this, or of these children or child? How can we ensure they're going to be safe? And then saying, okay, well, the quickest, least difficult way is to go through a shelter.
Yeah. So you have to, for like a CPS case, you have to say, I'm not homeless, I can take care of my child. But then to get housing, you have to say, yeah, I am homeless. Yep. And that's kind of...
Well, and then telling the providers that we're sending them to a shelter. I mean, that's frightening to think about, especially if you don't know how the shelters work. And I think Spokane's doing a good job addressing that right now as much as they can. I think there's a lot more work to do. But it's definitely frustrating from a clinical perspective. How do we safely transition these women and these children and set them up for success when we're having to send them to a shelter? It's very disheartening. And we only have 6 rooms that we can keep those people, safe in. It's not enough.
Especially after you just did the work for 6 months. 7 months, probably. And that's one of the huge issues with people going to jail, let's say. It's like jail, prison, whatever, it's such a waste of time. It's such a waste of human life. You're just sitting in a box. And the worst part is there's no preparation from when you get out.
Right.
You're just back where you started.
And oftentimes in much worse condition, because you have all kinds of things that you're responsible for ensuring you're doing, but you don't have the time or resources to do them.
And then you just get sent back and sent back, and your record gets worse and worse. And then if you're a felon, it's hard to get a job, a house. It's like, what is going on here? It's being I get so enraged because my family is kind of steeped in this. We have a pretty problematic family, and my brother is a felon, and it's frustrating. His felony was going to be removed, and like a year before it was going to be removed, some small stupid incident happened, and it restarted the 7 years, and he has 4 kids. And so getting a job is difficult. Getting a place to stay is difficult. It's ridiculous. It's not set up for people to win, especially if you're at the very bottom. So it's
it is. I actually worked for the Department of Corrections for about 10 months. And that was one of the things I saw that was so incredibly frustrating, was the amount of things that they were required to do, but no resources to do them, or the demands were too high that they would not be successful. I mean, it was a setup for failure. And if they have any other entities that are interested in how they're doing, like CPS, then you're doubling those efforts. So you're doing everything that the department is asking you to do, and then you're trying to meet all of your release conditions as well, and it can be impossible. And that was hard to see.
It's it just seems like we would be using our money so much more wisely if we would do things correctly the first time. And it's like, I was talking to the woman who runs one of the DCRs for the crisis center. I was like, look, this is my sister's 3rd time being called. And we already talked about this, but like the 5 days, that's not enough. None of the, and you're talking about housing wait lists. Sometimes the wait list is 2 years, 3 years. That's crazy. And it's not like we don't have housing, we don't have property in Spokane. But rent is just getting higher, and it's difficult. Yeah. But so we can get back to Isabella House. Okay. What are some things you would like people to know about it? We've talked a bit about, one of my favorite things again is PPW? Yeah, that's wicked cool. And how does that work?
What is PPW?
Pregnant parenting women.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I knew that.
How does that work? Because one of my sister's main concerns is right now my mom has temporary custody of her son, and she is soon going to be fighting for permanent custody, and my sister is just panicking, and she's actually trying to use that. I think addicts will use any reason they can, especially one seemingly so important as your child being taken away. But she's in treatment in Chehalis right now. They did the mandatory 2 weeks, and she's like, I have to get out of here. I have to fight for my kid, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, you're just using that as a reason. But how does that work when somebody is struggling for custody of their kid while they're getting treatment?
So it depends on 2 different factors. If it's a family law case or if it's a dependency with the state. So I'm an expert in CPS dependencies, and so navigating them for me is very easy because I know what the laws are, I know what the department is required to do, and what the rights of the patient are. And so if you don't know that, you're going to be in a world of trouble if you don't have an advocate in that system. Family law is much more difficult. As an advocate, we're not allowed to speak on our client's behalf. We can't assist them in that way, and so.
Which they would have to rely on a public defender or something?
Not in family law. You have to get your own attorney or represent yourself, which is virtually impossible.
That's unless you can ludicrous. Because if you're even in the position in the first place, you don't have the means to do that.
Typically not.
Oh my God.
So there are attorneys that will do pro bono work.
It's really hard to find.
But even pro bono, it's like my sister, and I don't know so much about pro bono, but my sister has a public defender, and half the time he doesn't show up. Yeah. And that's so damn infuriating with my sister's case in particular, probably also because I'm so close to the situation. But she has like drug court and all that stuff, and I don't know too much about that. But basically, they told her they're going to give her this ultimatum, which is like, you have all these felonies hanging over your head. We can wipe these felonies, and you can go to rehab, or you can go to jail. And I could be wrong on this part, but it seems like she said, and if you bail out on jail, you go to prison. I don't know.
Yeah, is that DOSA?
Very potentially. Yeah. So the DOSA is the drug offender reassignment or something. I can't recall what it was. I was the DOSA counselor at the jail. So they can revoke your DOSA if that's what it is. Drug court, I think there's a lot of benefits to that, but there also it's hard to get out of that system once you're in it. Yeah. And especially if you have an attorney who's not working for you like they're supposed to, and they're getting paid to do that. Yeah. So there are people that you can contact to complain about that, really? And you should.
That's good to know. Yeah.
So there's ombudsmans for attorneys, and I have filed them. So the public defender is clocking hours for your sister, and if she's not getting representation, he's working for her.
Which is life-threatening. because we have been banking on the idea, okay, well, if she's not necessarily willingly going to go to treatment, if the court can force her as a result of actions she's made, then that could be a saving grace. And there are times where it just gets put off and put off and put off. She's getting extension after extension after extension. There's been 1 million extensions for like 8 months now.
Yeah.
And there's been no action taken. And she has overdosed multiple times in that period. So it's like, and I understand COVID is going on, court systems are backed up, but it's probably killing people that they're not taking any action.
Yep.
And that's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
If she had a CPS dependency, she could enter family treatment court, and then she would have an attorney in that venue as well.
What is the difference, the qualifying factors, if it's...
So with a CPS dependency, you're provided an attorney at the state's cost. Your child can also get an attorney at the state's cost. Yeah. And then also a guardian ad litem or CASA worker, which is a person whose solely entire job is to make sure that the child's well-being is at hand, regardless of what one party says or the other.
That's good to know.
And you have representation. Yeah. With family law, you're either trying to use a court facilitator to make sure your paperwork is correct, trying to find an attorney.
And what determines what category you're going to be put into?
Whoever chooses, if...
You can choose which one you want to go through?
Well, not necessarily.
You'd have to have an open CPS case.
Correct. So, which is a lot easier to navigate. Not that a lot of people know that, but that's a lot easier to navigate than family law.
Yeah.
When you hear CPS,
that's scary.
It is.
You're real scared.
Yeah.
There's
I would take a
benefits.
CPS case all day long over a family law case all day.
Yeah. There's so many benefits to CPS. I'm so grateful that I had CPS because I had so many, more opportunities. They really push you to better yourself, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Well, they want to keep the families together, right?
That is the goal. Not all of them have that shared vision, which is why I file complaints like that. But the mission of CPS, yes, is to reunify when it's safe to do so and keep families together when it's safe.
Yeah. And so, so how does that work when, like, let's say in my sister's case, for example, my mom has temporary custody. She's soon fighting for permanent custody. Yep. If my sister were in your facility, what would happen in that case?
We would attempt to get her an attorney to help represent her case. What happens in the temporary custody orders is there's an outline of what needs to happen typically. And if your sister's not following through with those things, it's really difficult to convince.
What are some examples of those? Obviously going through the treatment program.
Correct. Yeah. That would be one of them, and following recommendations. It may have a psych eval component to it. There's lots of things they can add to that. And because it's family law, it's a lot more open to whomever has the child's discretion, really, about what they're asking and what the limitations are. And so for someone to take that case on, an attorney, they would want someone that's really invested in working hard to get their kiddo back because they're doing it for free. So it's challenging. That's why I think CPS is easier.
Thing is challenging as hell. It's just, I've been back in Spokane for roughly a year, mainly moved back because of all my family situations. And dealing with my sister, I get pissed off because it seems like it's so mismanaged, but on the other end, you're dealing with human beings who are incredibly complex and at times very problematic and working against their own interests. And it's hectic. Is there anything you think that if you could wave your magic wand, what would you change about the way things are being handled right now? Because I think I have a few, but again, I don't know. When I talk to these people, like, well, that's a breach of like your personal freedoms or your rights and all that stuff. And it's like, I don't view my sister as, she's 22. I don't view her as an adult. I view her as my little sister who I want to save her life, you know, but she's an adult.
Right.
And so there are some limitations in what you can do.
Right. If I could wish everyone well, I wouldn't have a job, right?
Yeah.
It's quite unfortunate. I think instilling hope is so important. And also not taking it personally. And that can be very hard for family members, especially when you care so much and you don't want to see them harm themselves or die from that. Being emotionally invested in her decision making is going to disappoint. And that's probably the hardest thing, is being able to separate yourself emotionally when it's someone that you love and care for so much, and they're not at a place where they're able to see the value in that. I think as a society and culture, we really stigmatize addiction, and that is disheartening, because then it places all of these labels on us, and we already do that enough. And so the way that I practice therapy is, yes, this might be a component of who you are. Either, you are, you committed a crime, or you're a felon, or, you're a drug addict. What else about you is there? There must be more. Like, Heidi is a mom. She's funny. She's intelligent. She's smart.
Thank you.
She's very helpful. All of those things. So if I get to pick one, why can't I pick one of those? And so when I'm treating my patients, that's how I treat them, is I'm looking at them as a whole person. Yes, this is maybe an aspect, but if I'm only looking at that and saying that's who this person is, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to be behaving that way. When you're hearing it day in and day out, and society is saying it to you, you're a criminal, you're a drug addict, they're placing you so below where you need to be and where you are. And so being able to educate people on addiction, and realize that people don't wake up one day and say, I want to fuck my life up, right? I'm not, or my kids even, they don't wake up and do that consciously. And so being able to teach that, and get people in the community, not only just citizens, but providers, to stop placing that judgment on them, and allowing them to be who they are.
So when my sister was picked up this last time, I was infuriated at the way the cops handled things, because when you're in that line of work, this is what you do all day.
Right.
You become jaded, and they should be sending mental health care professionals out there who are leading the operation. Correct. And then the cops are there as backup, because essentially the way it worked was my sister was sleeping. She didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't want to give her a heads up so she'd have the chance to bolt. But she was taking a nap, probably a recovery nap, because she was using a day or two before. They pound on the door, just like terrifying, like doo, 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 doo. And so we open up. She's scared out of her mind. She knows the sound of a policeman knocking. So she bolts to the back room. And eventually she's out in the living room with us. And there's no talk. It's just, hey, get up, go, we're going. And then she was like, scared out of her mind. She's like, I don't know what's going on. And so then they just manhandled her.
Yeah, it's dehumanizing.
It's so dehumanizing. I thought they were going to break her arm. They were so mishandling the situation. And I just think if there was some compassion in that moment,
just even a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean,
and especially somebody who's in a unstable mental state, you know? And if you could have just talked them through this whole process. And I didn't understand why it has to be, let's go right now.
Right.
If it took 2 hours, it took 2 hours. Like anything to get this to go peacefully and make it a somewhat positive experience, or at least not a terrible experience.
Right.
And so we had all the neighbors watching us, which you're an addict, you're withdrawing, you've got all these people staring at you. And so she's screaming, she's biting, she's like trying to get away. And that's not how it needs to be handled by any means.
That's awful. Fight or flight for sure. That's what that is.
And then we were talking about and I'm going to bleep them out, but detox facilities. And that's another thing that I get pissed off about, because my sister would talk to me about the conditions there. And I thought she was exaggerating, because she's just an angry kind of negative person when she's using. She's a bright and beautiful, bubbly person when she's sober, but her outlook isn't that great when she's withdrawing, or, you know.
No one's
right, especially when, I was like, I don't have yet to meet anybody. You can
be the sweetest person in the world. If you're withdrawing, it doesn't matter.
And so when she would describe the conditions of stars, I was like, there's no way it's that bad. But then Heidi confirmed, you're on mats on the floor.
Yeah. The sobering unit. Yeah. That's what's bad. The detox facility is not bad. Yeah. It's the sobering unit, and you have to be there for, however many days you're there for.
And that's when you're the sickest.
Yeah.
Definitely not set up for.
And so her boyfriend, she and her boyfriend were using together, basically very codependent. She ended up going to jail, and when she got out, he was nowhere to be found, and he was actually getting sober, which made her feel miserable because she was like, you're my partner in crime. Right. You bailed on me. Now you're sober, and I'm still stuck on the streets. But the way he got sober is his family took him to a beautiful house that they had in the woods, no contact with the outside world, no triggers, no dealers that you're around that you could just bolt and run to. And that made all the difference. A beautiful place, a comfy bed, home-cooked meals, your loved ones around you.
Yes.
That is the complete opposite of these detox facilities. No family. Maybe you can take calls, maybe you can't. The food is atrocious. You're sleeping on the floor. How is that to get sober? How is that inviting to get sober at all?
Yeah, no, that it doesn't sound like a setup for success at all. I think it's ideally the way that her boyfriend got sober would be, that would be the dream way for
that
everybody.
Is a dream scenario.
But usually they're being thrown in jail, where they're detoxing in jail.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that would be fun either. Yeah. It would not be the F word I would use. And then detox, those are very, very uncomfortable environments. And so
and you're
it's
already
not welcoming.
Physically very uncomfortable.
And angry, typically. So that's not going to help.
And so is everyone else. And you're around them. There's definitely a vibe in there because, everyone's giving off this just sick, uncomfortable thing. It's hard to be comfortable, even if, you've got everything in there. If everyone's miserable, eventually you will be too.
Bounces off each other.
Exactly.
It's definitely not going to reap positivity at all.
And like you were saying, when you get there, there's all these people you've never met. The energy of the person that you saw when you first walked in the door was like...
Oh, at Isabella house. The minute I walked in that door, this girl, she left the next day. I don't remember her name, but she gave me the worst look, just like, I want to kill you. And I was terrified. I was terrified. And, after about an hour and a half of talking to other people, I felt a little better, but I was still terrified.
I have zero tolerance for not being welcoming.
Yes,
and I am much quicker to act than the previous administrator. Yep, I will have you pack your things immediately because it's just not. It's not helpful.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder why there aren't more. We had a woman from Catholic Charities on. That was our first guest, and I love their housing facility. I actually did janitorial work there for a little bit a couple years back. But it's dignified, to say the least. You have your own quarters. They help you with counseling, parenting issues, and all that stuff. And God, I just wish I almost wish we could say, okay, how many homeless and people who have a substance abuse disorder, if we could just count them, get a kind of an estimate of how many people there are, build some apartment complexes. And people, even Sarah, the woman from Catholic Charities, people have negative views on that, you're just housing them, you're just but giving them some sense of dignity and having
a place
to
rest, to even think about what to do next. And I do know that they do surround a lot of supports around people that come in there. Getting them to stay might be a little bit problematic, especially when the weather is nice. It's far less uncomfortable to be homeless when it's warm. I do know that they're getting better, but we have a long way to go. And there's so many people that need assistance. And, we have a huge homeless population that has severe mental illness as well. And we're closing down, buildings that housed them. And that's terrifying. And so it's happening. I think we're trying to address it, but we're not quick enough. And the problem's too big.
Would you, from your experience, do you have any idea if it's getting worse or better?
I think Spokane's doing better. I'd say when I look at other counties, and because we work with people from all over the state, when I'm looking for aftercare and things like that, there are some counties that have no housing, and it's terrifying. It's what do we do next? Spokane has definitely stepped up in that regard. I think a lot more money needs to be allocated to that. But I do think that we're getting better.
Yeah. That was one thing we were brought up in our little pre-talk, which was like, why are these people sleeping on the floor? I could go around to many different stores or even use like Valley Village or something and find just like bare minimum, but sleeping on the floor, it's like, what kind of budget do you have? And why is your food so awful? Because that's one thing, that's the main reason my sister bailed from detox one of the million times.
On the food aspect, they serve certain food because it's easy on the stomach. A big thing, which you would think is, you wouldn't want when you're getting sober, they give you a lot of like split pea soup because it has, vitamins and things that you need. It's also easy to get down. It might not smell the best. Their split pea soup wasn't that bad, actually. It looks gross, but it actually didn't taste so bad. But they give you a lot of like soup and like bread sandwiches, things that would be easy to eat when you're detoxing.
That's one question I had. I wasn't sure if it was a thing just for my sister or if it was an opioid thing. Did you have an affinity for sugar?
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
So, is that a thing?
Yeah.
So we don't actually allow sugar at our facility. So our women.
Is that because it like supplements an addictive?
It does. So it definitely. People who are withdrawing definitely crave sweets significantly more.
I wonder what that is. Yeah.
I can't recall the scientific reasons behind that.
Because when she was getting sober, I took her food shopping. She was like, ice cream, candy, fruit, yogurt, honey, caramel, just
chocolate milk.
Yeah, there was not 1 ounce of vitamins or anything in the whole mix. And I was like, what is going on here?
Yep.
And I wasn't sure if that was just her or if that was because she's the only person I deal with. So that is interesting.
Yeah.
Also, no sugar.
Yeah. What year were you there?
2017.
Yes, that was the candy scandal year.
Oh my God. We all had candy all the time.
Yeah.
Really?
Every single one of us.
They actually, I just now, a month ago, allowed walks again after.
Oh, yeah.
Since 2017, we stopped allowing the women to go on walks alone.
That's a long time.
You have no idea. So, because the women were hiding candy at the apartment complex and then going for walks, and it was quite the scandal.
I have to say,
I knew it when she said that.
It wasn't that hard. My first 3 months at Isabella House, I broke every rule and no one knew because I played a good, game. I ended up ratting on myself, and that's when my program really started, and it did help a lot. But it was really easy to take things in because they check you when you get home. They don't check you that much. If you got big boobs, you can hide something under your boob. No one's going to see that.
Right.
If you have a hidden pocket in your jacket, no one's going to check it.
Yeah.
Or in your shoe.
Yeah. It was, and we all had candy or scratch tickets.
All of it.
Money.
It was intense.
Phones, cigarettes.
Yeah. So with that, our program is a behavior modification program. And so it would be silly of us to believe that the rules are always going to. Exactly. Yeah. So the intent is not necessarily that we want all of these people being, rule adherers.
Yeah.
The goal is can we get you to say no more often to things you shouldn't have or do, so that when you're presented with something that can kill you, you can say no. And so it's reinforcing that no.
Genius. Yeah.
So everything we do there is purposeful. Everything from, you're allowed 2 cups of coffee in the morning. Do we know that you guys drink more or that the clients do? Yes. Yeah. But the goal is to get you to realize, yes, you're breaking a rule. Yeah. Is it going to harm you? No. Not right now. You might have a consequence that's pretty minimal, but the goal is to just reinforce.
It's just analogous to drug use. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
like you said, it's your real progress began when you just started to make those decisions for yourself.
It's behavior modification, and I think my biggest, negative, like not negative, but thing that I needed to work on is that how easy it was for me to, look like I'm doing everything right, but being able to get away with so much. And there was a lot going on in the house when I ended up telling on myself. But once I did, and I had a laundry list of things, and I told on everything that I have done, everything changed for me. I didn't sneak any more candy in the house. I wasn't doing any dishonest behavior. I wasn't drinking more than 2 cups of coffee in the morning, which is easy to do if you want to. But once you realize like these are bad behaviors, these are behaviors that aren't going to, help me forward. It's a lot easier to just do it. And it's a lot more rewarding.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately each person in the program, it's their program, and they're going to do it how they think they should do it, regardless of what I say.
The expression, it works if you work it, isn't that?
Right.
I think that's AA, but
it's similar though.
Yeah.
Heidi needed to do that for her own conscience. We know that they're doing that. We know that they're doing things like that.
You're not running a jail where it's like,
Well, and we're not going to do that. The intent is really to expose you to enough stress and triggers and desires that you're going to say no at some point.
God, I almost want that in my own life.
Well, to hold yourself accountable when you have done something that, you weren't supposed to do, which you end up, being like, okay, well, I don't know can't think of anything off the top of my head, but you tell on yourself when it happens. And that gets easier.
One of the things I think my sister struggles with is coming to terms with her entire past.
Trauma.
These past 3 years, things she's gone through, things she's put herself through, mistakes she's made, all of that stuff. And that's kind of the momentum that keeps you using, because you don't want to face all of those issues.
Shame.
Guilt, shame, and I have those. Like I said, when I smoke a cigarette, I feel guilty every time I light a cigarette. And that's like a tiny version of she was stealing from people, stealing from stores, getting arrested. It's like, and all of that stays with you. And it's like, how do I get away from these feelings? You go and use.
It's definitely hard. I, on top of doing stuff at Isabella House, I was required by CPS to do like mental health. I did EMDR, which helps with
what is that again?
Trauma. EMDR. It is
I've heard of it.
It's a therapy to like alleviate the like trauma that you've gone through.
Is it like light stimulation?
It is. Yeah, so I used a vibration thing.
They call it eye movement, rapid desensitization.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And that helped me a lot with my like trauma aspect, but it's still really difficult to move forward in everyday life, knowing that I'm the reason that my oldest son, when at Isabella House, he didn't want to talk to me. He lives with me now, but it was really difficult to know that I'm the reason he didn't want to talk to me, and I'm the reason that he is going to have some abandonment issues. And to this day, I do get like glimmers of that. He has a lot of behavioral problems. I'm in a place where I can be there to help him grow and cope with those. But I know that I'm the reason he is struggling with those things, and that's kind of hard to deal with. But
that breaks my sister too when he's like, I don't want to talk to you, mommy. It's like, and you can see the frustration in his eyes and in his voice, but that's we were talking to her the other day from the treatment facility, and she's like, I need to get out of here, I need to go get my son back, blah blah blah. And we're just like,
but this is her first step.
The best thing you could do to get your son back is just stay. This everything about these situations is difficult, and it's the most difficult on the person who's going through it, but it's difficult on the family as well. It's so rough. Like my dad has lost probably years of his life from the stress. It's just like I said, and she's overdosed and technically died on multiple occasions.
Right.
And as a parent, like that's
devastating.
When she's not answering her calls, and we buy her phones, we pay for her phone bills, and she sells them or they get stolen, and then my dad as well as me, we're just staying up every night like, is she even alive?
Right.
And that was the most frustrating thing about the release of information. I understand that's for their own personal safety and rights, but when you're like, is she okay and is she living? And they're like,
we cannot
the most.
They can't
that
confirm
is
that,
the most.
confirm or deny that.
I have never had a string of words infuriate me more than that.
Yeah.
I can neither confirm or deny that she's even here.
Right.
And I'm just like, I just want to fucking know if she's alive.
Right.
I just need to know she's alive. Then I can go to bed.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think as a family member, I can understand that.
Yeah.
As a client, it's absolutely within their right to say, I don't want anyone to know anything about me. And if they're angry, especially, that's going to be.
Sometimes it's kind of nice to break yourself away from that, even though, you know, your family is struggling.
Yeah.
Knowing that you don't have to think about that right now.
Yeah.
Right.
It is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's the advice that I give to families that call and are really going through it is, yes, you can love them, but don't love them to death.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that can happen if you start to become so entrenched and entangled in your desire to want them to be sober, and it overshadows basically reason at some points when you're driving around the streets looking for someone,
which I did last week.
Yeah. And so that's tough, you know, and I get it from, you know, a personal standpoint. That's very difficult. From a professional standpoint, it's being able to separate yourself and say, I can love you and I will love you, and I'll wish the very, very best, but I can't continue to sap my resources, whether that's emotionally, financially, whatever it might be, to continue to feed into this addiction. And ultimately that's what will happen, or what is happening. And until she's kind of gotten to that place, and maybe it's not having support that wakes them up, and who would ever want to do that? But at the same time, it's loving them enough to say, hey, no, I'm not going to get you a phone.
Yeah.
You know, that's, you know, those kinds of things, setting those boundaries and being really firm on them, and not being angry anymore.
Yeah.
And that's hard because you have a huge investment in what happens. She's your sister and you want to protect her, but being able to step back and saying, I'll love you and support you in any way I can here, but I can't.
It is difficult to manage your emotions, because one aspect of you is like, you're so sad and you're so worried all the time. And then another part, it's like, we take her home, we try to make her comfortable and help her detox for a while, and then she's up gone. Fit.
Yep.
And like, she does this thing all the time where she's been home with us, she's been detoxed for a little while. She goes, hey, can we go to the store? I just want to get some ice cream or something. And we go, okay. We're not even thinking about it. We're just like, we're going to get ice cream. And she'll find a reason, whatever it is, to be mad about something, to make an excuse to get out of the car. So she says, better let me out, or I'm going to jump out while you're driving. And then she bolts and disappears. Yeah. And so you just want to freak out. You're just like so angry. Like, you've been sober for 3, 4, 5 days. Yeah. And now you're just throwing it all away. And it's like, then the search continues. Where is she? Is she alive? Who is she with? You know, is she sleeping on the street?
Yeah.
And
So I would encourage your family to stop taking her to the store.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's That's
if
what
she wants to go to the store, she's going to need to figure out her own ride. I mean, that if you respond differently, she'll start to respond differently.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons she hates me the most, because it's like my dad, I do a job where I can clock on, off whenever I want. I have time to do whatever, whenever. And also my dad's getting older. And so like me, I'll call her on her shit. I'll realize actions she's taking and adjust my behavior to try to prevent certain things from happening. And that's why she's the most angry with me at all times, because I'm the only one who's like, but man, it's terrifying. It's a weird line to draw, because like when she's at our house, right? And you know, everybody needs to use the bathroom. Okay, are you in the bathroom because you're going to the bathroom or taking a shower, or are you using? Why have you been in there for an hour? Why have you been in there for 45 minutes? You know? So
you know Pavlov, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's basically what's happened within the family system, and that happens often. I hear it a lot. And I try and talk about that very candidly with the patients that I work with, because just like Pavlov, you know, he comes out, rings a bell, and the dog starts to salivate.
Reinforcing.
Right. And so what's happened is any of her behaviors are now using behaviors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the family has now created, it's a Pavlov effect is what's happened. And so anything she's doing, the family's questioning the motive.
Yeah. And that makes her angry.
Because she's like, well, if you're accusing me, I might as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And sometimes she's like, I'm just going to the bathroom. And you want to say, okay, I believe you. Yeah. But then the next time you hear a slump and she's fallen over, passed out.
Exactly.
And so it's like, what am I supposed to think at any given second? You know, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. Well, and what I talk with my clients about in that regard is, you know, you've helped create this situation and these ideas about your behaviors. And so it's going to take you a long time to undo them because it took you a long time to train them to respond the way they're responding. And so it's challenging for sure.
And she's always saying, can't you just trust me? And I'm like,
my sister and my mom were so upfront. Because I used to do that too, you know. It's like, I don't always lie. You know, just trust me. And they're like, no, I can't. You have proven nothing to me that I can trust you. And it got to the point with me where, you know, my mom wouldn't answer my calls sometimes. And she wouldn't let me in the house. And I had nowhere to go. Yeah. And, you know, it's hard. It's a hard thing to do because you want to know that person can come to you. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, they're coming to you, but it's for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. So you really have to put a line down and be like, you know, no, I'm not going to let you sleep here anymore.
So what, I have mixed feelings about places where it's like, we're shelter, no drugs allowed. Mm-hmm. And I'm almost like, well, they're going to use, should it be in a safe place? What would, in somebody like in my situation with my family and her staying with us, how should we go about her drug use at our home? Should we say, don't stay here if you have drugs? Should we say, you're going to stay here, but we're going to monitor every move you make? Or not necessarily say that out loud, but it's kind of a given. Do you have any advice on how to navigate those waters?
I think having a very transparent conversation with each other about what you guys are willing to tolerate and what you're not, and then being a united force in that. Yeah. And is it easy? No. You know, I'm not in that situation, so I can't direct one way or the other, but I do know the potential of overdose is so high. Yeah. And are you guys prepared to find her?
Yeah. And that's the last time, luckily, randomly, my aunt had a thing of Narcan in her car. Yep. When my sister overdosed in the bathroom. Yep. They had to bust the door down. Oh, yeah. And she was like, thank God I had that. Mm-hmm. She had it in her car forever, just for whatever past reasons, I don't know. But if she hadn't had it, she wouldn't be here with us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would be stalking your house if she's going to stay there.
Yeah, that's what my dad and I were talking about. Yeah. But also, Narcan's $50. It's $50 per dose, and that's expensive as hell too. I mean, it's worth it to have a few of them on. Mm-hmm. It's literally life-saving.
You can likely call the health district, and they can get you some for free. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's really good to know. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say about Isabella House? I do always wonder what it's like to even get into a place like that. Like I was talking with Catholic Charities on their steps on how somebody would go about even contacting availability, you know, anything you'd like to say. So
we are not an assessment site, so we can only take referrals for people who already have an assessment. Yeah. And then that assessment would need to say that they're at a 3.3 level of care, which is a long-term intensive inpatient treatment, which is PPW programs in Washington. Our wait list depends kind of on a lot of different factors. Certain people in certain circumstances go to the top of the list. Like if you're pregnant and you're injecting, you go straight to the top. Yeah. And so those may supersede some other folks. So they would just call our intake coordinator, Dre McKenzie. And our phone number is 509-624-1244, extension 108 for her.
Okay. Make sure to put that on the screen too.
Thank you. And she can give a better idea about what wait lists and things like that look like. To walk through the doors of our facility is the most respectful thing that I can honestly say I see day in, day out. I could not imagine making a commitment like that to say I'm going to go to this strange place with all of these strange people, with all of these really awful behaviors a lot of times, or difficult behaviors, very different personalities.
Tons of kids,
different parenting styles, and then you have all of these authority figures too that are directing you. And so not having compassion for me, I will write my staff up immediately, if not terminate, because that's just, I can't imagine making that decision. And I don't care who's having a bad day. It's never going to be as bad as the day that someone has to walk through a treatment program like that. While there's hope on one end of that, a lot of times it's very difficult to see that. And so it's so remarkable. It's humbling.
That's beautiful. My eyes are watering. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I ask all my staff to have that same attitude and compassion, because it's the most difficult thing that they'll do in their lifetime.
That's one thing I wish was stressed more in detox facilities or in the police force. And again, people get, when that's your job all day, people coming in and out, problematic, drug abuse, it's like you get jaded. You get a little sick of everything. So that's wonderful. Anything else you'd like to talk about, Heidi?
Oh, I don't know.
Any fond experiences at Isabella House?
I am so grateful for Isabella House. I talk very highly of Isabella House. I think it's just such a wonderful program, and I'm blessed to have been there. It's really difficult at first. There's so many rules that you eventually have to adhere to, but it's all worth it. Like in the end, I wouldn't be here, if I had never gone there, honestly.
Well, I'm so proud of you, Heidi.
Thank you.
Proud of you.
And I know the whole family is too. We're gonna wrap up. I had another question. Is there anything, my dad and I always wish this existed, is there anything you can sign as somebody being admitted where you can say, I'm here of my own free will, but I want you to not let me out? Is there any facility or anything that allows for that? Because it does seem, there's an episode, have you seen the show Shameless?
No,
oh, that's all right.
I've heard of it.
There's an episode where there's an addict who robs one of the cast of the show, one of the people in the show. And it's not a great thing he did, but he recognized the man was an addict, chained him to a post in his basement, and forced him to get sober. And the guy thanked him at the end of that. And that's radical and ridiculous, obviously. Right. But I almost do think most addicts deep down kind of want that. I feel like that's kind of what my sister wants. And I've always wondering, why isn't there something where you can sign and say, look, in this moment, I want to get sober, but I know I'm not going to want to in the future once the withdrawal symptoms kick in or whatever, psychologically. I feel like there should be something like that. Unless you disagree, I don't know your thoughts on that.
Well, I think just the legality behind that is tough. I can understand from a family's perspective why. However, people come in very motivated. They're like, I want to do this. I can't wait. I'm so grateful to be here. And then 48 hours later, they're like, I'm fucking out of here. And so there isn't. There's, we actually have them sign a hold harmless agreement that you understand you're not being held here against your will. Although you may have significant consequences. And so it's really the clinician's job to say, okay, let's look at these discrepancies. You're saying you want all of these things. These are your goals, but yet your behaviors are not adding up to that. And so how can we get them to be more congruent? How can we get them to add up? And if you're saying, I want my child, or I don't want to have any oversight by the courts, but yet you're aborting treatment, that doesn't make sense. And so creating those discrepancies is important, but if you don't have time, you're sort of at a loss. The other piece is with drug court, they can be involuntarily committed for 180 days, which is LRA. Do
you have people that are involuntary committed?
I do.
To your, God, I wish I knew how that worked a bit more, because again, like my sister's kind of going through that, but all the extensions and she hasn't.
Well, in 2 weeks, I mean, it sounds like they're kind of creeping on the longer periods of time. So she may reach that. Unfortunately, though, if she's in a program like ours, she can walk out We don't lock the doors.
Yeah. That's what I was telling him.
Yeah, but she would go to jail.
Yeah.
That would be the next thing they'd come find her. I actually
if she was there through drug court, you said.
Correct. So I had a client that was just recently picked up. They revoked her DNR or her LRA because she wasn't following the
recommendations. So if that happens, do you have any second chances of restarting? Yeah.
As long as you haven't blown the house up or something, acted completely insane. Now, for me, my tolerance for that kind of thing is pretty low, just because I have a whole house to think of and children, and so I have tolerance for some of it, but some stuff I just won't. And so if you're trying to start fights with people or you're explosive continuously, but I've had clients come back and do unbelievably well. I just make sure that they know right off the gate, we're not going to repeat what happened last time. So you got this. I know you got this.
I know it's difficult to know because once people are out of there, they're doing their own thing. What do you think the success rate, not just of yours, I mean, of any really rehab facility? Because you've been sober nearly 4 years now, right?
Yeah.
Which is amazing. But I've always been told that heroin is one of which is my sister's drug of choice, and meth when she's really down. You could relapse after 6 years, or it's like, what percentage of people do you see coming back?
It's hard to say.
Because they might go to another facility too.
Or because of the privacy laws, we can't really track them well. Addiction is addiction, and it's, success is really determined by the person that's wanting assistance, and it's not a great percentage, and we know that. But the longer you're in treatment and the more times that you attempt, the better your success rate is. And so it's not unusual to see people come back once or twice. I've had clients come back 3 times. I am just
one person
stunned.
Specifically. I saw there 3 different times when I was there and in transitional house. And
I've had them complete successfully and come back.
That's
several
like
times.
A year and a half of
it's crazy. And so knowing how difficult the program is and then making that decision to do it again is pretty remarkable. That's a commitment.
Do you guys partner at all with outpatient facilities?
Oh, yeah. So New Horizon Care Centers owns Sunray Court, which is our men's facility. We have 2 outpatient facilities, and then we also oversee the PCAP program, which is a parent-child assistance program. It's a grant-funded program.
You said Sunrise Court?
Sunray.
Is that like... Is there any men's version of Isabella House? Is that what that is?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that Cedronor has a family component, but it's not a PPW. So Spokane, no. That's
a little bit frustrating. I mean, because I know my dad or my brother has been in that situation. He has children, and things don't necessarily lean towards working with men that much who have children.
Right. Well, and the other piece of that is typically the crime. The crimes that men commit can be excluding to have around children. And so there's that piece of it too. And so you have to kind of balance, child safety.
Yeah, that's a very big point.
So it can be tough. Do I think there's a need? Absolutely there is. Logistically, I don't know how to make that work.
Well, go ahead.
Well, so I know someone that has been at Sunray Court twice. And even though it's not a parenting, there's not a parenting aspect of it. He was able to visit with his kids multiple times. So it's not, they aren't going to help you parent, but they're not going to force you to separate yourself from it much either. I mean, you will still be able to talk to your kids and, see them. It's just, they're not going to be able to live with you. But there are men and children. I think there's one Oxford men and children Oxford House.
There might be 2.
Yeah. And I know that my boyfriend, when I got out of treatment, he was living in an Oxford House. And at the time, his daughter was not a men and children, but CPS had approved it. And because the house had approved it, his daughter did live with him there for a short period of time before he got an apartment. So there are exceptions. No, it's not a treatment facility, but it is a sober environment, and they're going to encourage you to, do things for your recovery when you're living there. you know, and that way you can also do that with your kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's incredible that you guys offer that. Learning how to become a parent again after you get sober, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. Is there any information you'd like to give, just for maybe phone numbers or anything like that? Or
well, I think just the intake number for Dre. Mm-hmm. Our outpatient facility is, you can also call the 624-1244 number, and our outpatient is 201. They do assessments there, so they can do an assessment and send it over for referral, or outpatient services just in general. And they also do mental health there. So it's quite a big agency with lots of different supports.
Okay. Well, thanks both of you for coming.
Of course.
I appreciate
everything
for having
you
do. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Good luck to you and your family.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right.
That's the episode, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.